Blood splattered across Kai Walker's face as an arrow whistled past, embedding itself in the tree trunk inches from his head. The humid air of Atarius filled his lungs like hot soup as he ducked, rolled, and sprinted toward the fallen alien child. All around him the jungle burned, scorched by incendiary arrows. The screams of the dying, both human mercenaries and native Tarians, created a hellish orchestra that he'd grown too accustomed to hearing. Kai slid to his knees beside the blue-skinned girl, his medic's hands already moving across her body, assessing damage. Her spine was clearly broken, the vertebrae visibly misaligned beneath her translucent skin, but her eyes, large, violet, with horizontal pupils, still tracked his movements, still alive. "I've got you," he muttered, already reaching for his field kit. "Just hold on." A shadow fell across them. Kai's hand moved to his knife, but froze when he saw the towering Tarian male standing over them. The alien's blue skin was crisscrossed with ritual scars, now joined by fresh wounds. Blood, darker and thicker than human blood, oozed from a gash across his chest. "Take her," the Tarian said in accented common, his voice like gravel against metal. "You've already saved her. Now teach her to live." Kai blinked in confusion. "And you?" The Tarian's face remained impassive. "I no longer exist." Before Kai could respond, the alien turned and walked into the thick smoke of the burning jungle, disappearing like a ghost. "Wait!" Kai called, but the only answer was another volley of arrows from the distant tree line. He cursed, shielding the girl's body with his own as projectiles rained around them. No time to wonder about the Tarian's strange behavior. No time for anything but survival. Kai worked quickly, fashioning a crude stretcher from vines and branches. The girl, Shaari, he would later learn, watched him with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. She didn't cry out when he stabilized her spine with strips of bark, though the pain must have been excruciating. "We need to move," he told her as distant war cries signaled another wave of attackers. "This is going to hurt." Shaari didn't respond, but her fingers twitched, curling around the edge of the stretcher. "Ready." Kai hefted the makeshift carrier onto his back, muscles screaming in protest. The humidity of Atarius, perpetually stuck in a wet season climate, made every movement a battle against the environment itself. Sweat poured down his face, mingling with blood and soot. He ran. The jungle stretched endlessly before him, a maze of massive trees with leaves thicker than his arm. Vines hung like curtains, bioluminescent fungi, providing patches of eerie blue light in the perpetual twilight beneath the canopy. Somewhere in the distance, a creature roared, a sound like tearing metal that made the hair on Kai's neck stand up. Glithars, the apex predators of this region. Four-legged hunters with blue fur and phosphorescent eyes that could see in absolute darkness. Their claws could shred hardwood. Their jaws could crush a stone. Better the Glithars than the Correctors, though. At least animals killed quickly, for food. The Correctors, the mercenary death squads hired to cleanse Atarius of its native population, killed slowly, methodically, ensuring maximum suffering before death. Kai had come to Atarius as part of a research team, studying the planet's unique flora for medicinal properties. When the corporate-backed purge began, his colleagues evacuated. He stayed. "I don't save planets," he'd told his bewildered teammates. "I just don't let them disappear silently." Now he was running for his life, carrying a paralyzed alien child, with killers on all sides. Just another day in paradise. Night fell quickly on Atarius, the transition from day to twilight lasting mere minutes. Kai found a hollow beneath the roots of a massive tree, just large enough to conceal them both. He carefully laid Shaari inside before crawling in after her. "We'll rest here," he whispered, checking her vitals. Her pulse was weak but steady, her breathing shallow but consistent. The improvised spinal brace seemed to be holding. Shaari's eyes remained fixed on him. She hadn't spoken yet, hadn't made a sound beyond the occasional sharp intake of breath when the stretcher jolted. But those eyes followed his every movement, calculating, assessing. "I'm Kai," he told her, offering a water pouch. "Kai Walker. I was a field medic back on Earth." She didn't take the water, didn't respond to his introduction, just watched. "You need to drink," he insisted, gently lifting her head. "And rest. We move again at first light." As he pressed the pouch to her lips, her hand suddenly shot up, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. Her eyes bored into his, and she spoke for the first time, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why save me? You're one of them." Kai shook his head. "I'm not with the Correctors. I'm a medic. I help people." "All humans kill Tarians now," she said, her grip tightening. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm all you've got," Kai replied simply. "And you're all I've got too." Something in his tone must have convinced her, because she released his wrist and allowed him to help her drink. After she'd taken her fill, she spoke again. "Shaari, my name is Shaari." "Nice to meet you, Shaari," Kai said, managing a tired smile. "Now sleep. Tomorrow will be harder." He was right. Dawn broke with the screams of dying men. Kai jolted awake, hand automatically reaching for his knife. Beside him, Shaari was already alert, her eyes wide. "Glithars," she whispered. "They're hunting." Kai peered cautiously from their hiding place. In the half-light of early morning, he could make out shapes moving through the underbrush, sleek, four-legged predators with blue fur that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. Their eyes glowed like cold fire as they pursued a group of humans. Correctors, a squad of 5, running for their lives as 3 Glithars closed in from different directions. Professional killers reduced to prey. Kai should have felt satisfaction. Instead, he felt only dread. If the Glithars were hunting here, their hollow wasn't safe. "We need to move," he whispered, already reaching for Shaari. "Wait," she hissed, gripping his arm. "Watch." The hunt was brutal and swift. The Correctors tried to climb trees, to separate and confuse the predators. It didn't work. The Glithars moved with terrible coordination, herding their prey into a clearing before closing in for the kill. One Corrector managed to lodge a spear in a Glithar's shoulder. The beast barely slowed, pouncing on the man and ripping his throat out with a single bite. The others fell just as quickly, their screams cutting off midway. Kai had seen men die before, had tried to save them and failed. But this was different. This was nature asserting dominance over those who thought themselves the ultimate predators. When the last Corrector fell, the Glithars began to feed. Kai used the distraction to carefully maneuver Shaari onto the stretcher and secure her. They needed to move while the predators were occupied. "Back entrance," Shaari whispered, pointing to a narrow gap in the roots behind them. Kai nodded, impressed by her thinking. He began to widen the gap, using his knife to cut through smaller roots. Once the opening was large enough, he carefully pushed the stretcher through before following himself. They emerged on the opposite side of the massive tree, well hidden from the feeding Glithars. Without a word, Kai lifted the stretcher and began moving quietly through the undergrowth, putting as much distance between them and the predators as possible. They traveled until midday, when the heat became too oppressive to continue. Kai found a small stream with relatively clear water and used the opportunity to clean Shaari's wounds and change her bandages. "The man who gave you to me," he said as he worked. "Who was he?" Shaari's face remained impassive. "My father." Kai nearly dropped the bandage he was holding. "Your father? And he just left you?" "He didn't leave me," she said, her voice suddenly fierce. "He saved me. The Correctors were coming. He couldn't carry me and fight, so he gave me to you." "But why me? I'm human, like them." Shaari's eyes seemed to look through him rather than at him. "Not like them. My father sees truth in eyes. He saw you saving our people while your kind was killing them. He knew." Kai wanted to ask more, but a sound stopped him, a subtle shift in the normal cacophony of jungle noise. The birds had gone quiet. "Someone's coming," he whispered, reaching for his knife. Shaari nodded almost imperceptibly, her body tensing despite her paralysis. Kai moved silently to a position behind a broad-leafed plant, knife ready. The footsteps grew closer, too deliberate for an animal, too quiet for someone who didn't know the jungle. A figure emerged from the foliage on the opposite bank of the stream, a human in the distinctive black armor of the Correctors, face painted with camouflage stripes. In his hands was a composite bow with a nocked arrow. The Corrector paused, scanning the area. His gaze passed over Kai's hiding spot without stopping, then moved to where Shaari lay partially concealed by broad leaves. Kai saw the moment of recognition in the man's eyes, saw him begin to raise his bow. No time to think, only react. Kai burst from his hiding place, splashing across the shallow stream. The Corrector whirled, loosing his arrow hastily. It caught Kai in the outer thigh, sending a flash of white-hot pain up his leg. But he didn't stop. He crashed into the Corrector, driving his knife upward beneath the man's ribs. The blade met resistance at the armored vest, sliding off to sink into the unprotected side of the torso. The Corrector grunted, dropping his bow to grapple with Kai. They fell together, rolling through the undergrowth in a desperate struggle. The man was strong, trained in close-quarters combat. He managed to knock the knife from Kai's hand and deliver a punishing blow to his jaw. Stars exploded across Kai's vision. He tasted blood. The Corrector reached for a secondary weapon, a serrated hunting knife strapped to his thigh. Kai grabbed the man's wrist, fighting to keep the blade away from his throat. They strained against each other, muscles trembling with the effort. Slowly, inexorably, the knife edged closer to Kai's neck. The Corrector's face twisted in a grin of triumph. "Die slow, traitor," he hissed. The tip of the blade touched Kai's skin, drawing a thin line of blood. Then the Corrector's eyes widened in shock. His grip slackened. Kai felt warm liquid splash across his chest as the man collapsed forward. Behind him stood Shaari, swaying precariously on legs that shouldn't have been able to support her. In her hand was Kai's dropped knife, now slick with the Corrector's blood. You can stand?" Kai gasped, pushing the dead weight of the Corrector off him. Shari's legs buckled, and she fell to her knees with a grimace of pain. Not well, not for long. Kai scrambled to her side, medical instincts taking over. "Your spine is still broken," she confirmed, "but Tarians have redundancies, secondary nerve pathways. They activate in emergency. Very painful, very temporary." As if to emphasize her point, she suddenly went rigid, a cry of agony escaping her lips before she collapsed completely. Kai caught her, cradling her convulsing body as the temporary neural connection failed. When the seizure passed, she lay limp in his arms, breathing hard. "Worth it," she whispered, "to save you." Kai stared at her in amazement. "You shouldn't have been able to move at all." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Humans know very little about Tarians. That's why it's so easy for them to kill us." The arrow in Kai's thigh chose that moment to remind him of its presence, sending a spike of pain up his leg. He gritted his teeth, knowing he needed to remove it before infection set in. "Need to take care of this," he said, gesturing to the arrow. "Then we move. Where there's one Corrector, there will be more." Shaari watched as he broke off most of the shaft, leaving just enough to grip. "You should leave me," she said suddenly. "I slow you down. You could move faster alone." Kai paused, looking her directly in the eyes. "Not happening. Why? I am nothing to you." "You're someone who needs help," he replied simply. "That's enough." He gripped the remaining shaft of the arrow, took a deep breath, and pulled. The barbed head tore through muscle as it exited, bringing a fresh wave of blood and a strangled cry that he couldn't quite suppress. Shaari watched silently as he bandaged the wound. "We're both injured now," she observed. "Our chances decrease." "Our chances were never good to begin with," Kai said with a grunt as he tied off the bandage. "Doesn't mean we stop trying." He gathered their meager supplies, secured Shaari to the stretcher, and pushed himself upright. His leg protested, threatening to buckle, but he locked his knee and forced it to hold. "Which way?" he asked, scanning the jungle. Shaari pointed north. "Higher ground. The temple ruins. Correctors avoid that place." "Why?" "They fear what they don't understand," she said cryptically. "And there are things in the ruins that no one understands." Kai hitched the stretcher onto his back, wincing as weight settled onto his injured leg. "Mysterious ruins it is then." They moved slower now, Kai's injury forcing frequent stops. The jungle grew denser as they pushed north, the vegetation changing subtly. The massive trees gave way to strange, spiral-trunked growths with canopies that interlocked completely, blocking out the sky. Bioluminescent fungi became more common, providing an eerie blue-green light. By nightfall, they had covered less than half the distance Kai had hoped for. He found a defensible position between the exposed roots of one of the spiral trees and carefully set Shaari down. "We camp here," he decided, too exhausted to continue. The wound in his thigh throbbed relentlessly, and he could feel the heat of infection beginning to set in. Shaari studied his face with concern. "You need medicine. For the fever." Kai gave her a tight smile. "I'm the medic, remember? I'll handle it." But his supplies were limited. Most of his antibiotics already used treating Tarian survivors before everything went to hell. He had just enough for a single dose, enough to stave off infection for a day or two, but not cure it completely. As he prepared the injection, Shaari spoke again. "There are plants in this region, kirifil, purple stem, white flowers. The sap fights fever." Kai paused. "You know local medicine?" "Some. My father was a healer before he was a warrior." Kai administered the antibiotic, then set about gathering wood for a small concealed fire. "Tomorrow we look for this kirifil plant. Tonight we rest." The night was filled with strange sounds, the distant roars of gleithars, the chittering calls of arboreal creatures, the occasional crash as something large moved through the undergrowth. Kai kept watch, knife ready, as Shaari slept fitfully. His fever rose steadily, bringing with it waves of chills despite the humid heat. By dawn, he knew he was in trouble. His leg had swollen to nearly twice its normal size, angry red streaks extending outward from the wound. "Bad?" Shaari asked, watching him examine it. "I've seen worse," he lied. "Liar," she said simply. "We need to find kirifil. Now." Kai fashioned a walking stick from a sturdy branch, no longer able to carry the stretcher. Instead, he helped Shaari fashion a harness that allowed her to be dragged behind him like a sled, using large leaves to reduce friction. They had traveled less than an hour when Shaari suddenly hissed a warning. Kai froze, following her gaze to a patch of disturbed vegetation ahead. "Someone passed here," she whispered. "Recently." Kai gripped his knife tighter, scanning the area. His fever-clouded senses detected nothing unusual, but he trusted Shaari's instincts. "Corrector?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "Different. The pattern is wrong. See how the leaves are bent? Not broken? Mrekti, maybe." Mrekti? Forest people. Small. Four-fingered. Not enemies of Tarians, but not friends either. Kai considered their options. His condition was deteriorating rapidly. They needed to find the medicinal plant Shaari had mentioned. Avoiding all contact wasn't feasible. "We proceed," he decided. "Carefully." They continued forward, Kai's senses on high alert despite his fever. The forest seemed to close in around them, the spiral trees growing closer together. The ground began to slope upward, indicating they were approaching the foothills of what Shaari called the Temple Mountains. They found the kirifil growing in a small clearing, exactly as Shaari had described, with purple stems and delicate white flowers. Kai harvested several plants following Shaari's instructions to extract the milky sap. "Applied directly to wound," she told him. "Drink infusion of leaves." The sap burned like fire when he spread it on the inflamed puncture, but the relief that followed was immediate, a cooling sensation that seemed to push back the heat of infection. The leaf infusion tasted bitter, but settled well in his stomach. "This is good medicine," he acknowledged as they rested in the clearing. "Your father taught you well." Shaari's expression softened at the mention of her father. "He taught me many things. How to read the forest, how to survive, how to recognize friend from enemy." She paused. "How to die with dignity when the time comes." "That time isn't now," Kai said firmly. "Not for either of us." A sound, barely perceptible, made them both tense. A soft footfall, too deliberate to be an animal. Kai reached for his knife, positioning himself between Shaari and the source of the noise. "Show yourself," he called, voice stronger than he felt. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the foliage parted, revealing a small, humanoid figure. Just as Shaari had described, shorter than a human, with leathery skin mottled in patterns of green and brown. It had four-fingered hands and large round eyes that reflected light like a nocturnal animal's. A Merekti. It carried a spear tipped with a crystalline material that caught the filtered sunlight, sending rainbow refractions dancing across the clearing. It made no aggressive moves, simply standing at the edge of the clearing, watching them. "What do we do?" Kai whispered to Shaari. "Wait," she replied softly. "Let it decide." The standoff lasted nearly a minute before the Mrekti made a series of complex hand gestures that meant nothing to Kai. To his surprise, Shaari's hands moved in response, forming shapes he couldn't interpret. "You speak their language?" he asked, amazed. "Hand speech," she confirmed. "Universal trade language on Atarius. My father insisted I learn." The Mrekti's expression changed. If Kai was interpreting its alien features correctly, it seemed surprised. "What did you tell it?" "That we seek sanctuary from those who hunt us. That we mean no harm to the forest people." The Mrekti made another series of gestures, more elaborate this time. Shaari's expression darkened. "It says the metal-armed ones, correctors, hunt in these woods too. They burn Mrekti villages, kill without purpose. They're expanding their purge," Kai realized. "Not just Tarians now, any native species." The Mrekti gestured again, this time pointing toward the mountains looming in the distance. "It offers to guide us," Shaari translated, "to the temple ruins. Says we will be safer there. The metal-armed ones fear the old places." Kai studied the small alien, trying to gauge its intentions. His instincts told him this was no trap. The creature's body language suggested genuine concern, perhaps even fear. "Tell it we accept," he decided. The trek to the temple ruins took the remainder of the day. The Mrekti, who introduced itself as Tikri through Shaari's translation, led them along hidden paths that Kai would never have found on his own. Trails that seemed to vanish into solid vegetation only to reappear on the other side. The Kirafel medicine worked better than Kai had dared hope. By midday, his fever had broken, and the angry red streaks had receded from around his wound. His strength began to return, enough that he could once again carry Shaari for short distances when the terrain became too difficult for dragging. As they climbed higher into the foothills, the vegetation changed again. The spiral trees gave way to shorter, hardier species with thick, waxy leaves. Strange, floating organisms drifted through the mist that clung to the slopes. Not quite plants, not quite animals, their translucent bodies pulsing with internal light. "Breath eaters," Shaari explained when she caught Kai staring. "They feed on exhalations. Harmless, unless you sleep with your mouth open." The terrain grew steadily steeper, forcing them to zigzag up the mountainside. Tikri moved with the sure-footed confidence of one born to this environment, occasionally pausing to help Kai navigate particularly difficult sections. They reached the temple ruins as the sun began to set. Kai's first impression was of immensity. Massive stone structures, partially reclaimed by vegetation, sprawled across a plateau that had been carved into the mountainside. The architecture was like nothing he'd seen before, neither human nor Tarian in design. The structures seemed to defy gravity, with sweeping arches and impossible cantilevers that should have collapsed under their own weight. "What is this place?" he asked in awe. Shaari's eyes were wide as she took in the ruins. "The Seekers built this," she said quietly. "The first sky people. They came to Atarius generations ago, and then vanished." "Humans?" Kai asked, surprised. "No, something else. Before humans. Before Tarians claimed this world as home." Tikri led them deeper into the ruins, toward a structure that appeared more intact than the others. A temple or palace of some kind, with a domed roof partially collapsed on one side. As they approached, Kai noticed strange symbols carved into the stone, flowing script that seemed to shimmer in the dying light, as if the characters were moving when viewed peripherally. Inside, the temple opened into a vast chamber, with a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadows. The walls were covered in more of the strange, shifting script. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal of some crystalline material that caught the last rays of sunlight, refracting them into a rainbow that danced across the ancient stone. Tikri made a series of gestures, pointing to the pedestal and then to a corner of the chamber where the floor had been fashioned into a series of shallow depressions. "It says we can rest here," Shaari translated. "We will be safe. The Correctors do not enter the temple." "Why not?" Kai asked, still taking in the incredible architecture. When Shaari relayed the question, Tikri's response was a series of sharp, agitated gestures. "It says, the metal-armed ones tried once. Those who entered never emerged. Those who waited outside heard screams." Shaari paused, watching Tikri continue. "It says the temple chooses who may enter. We were chosen. The metal-armed ones were rejected." Kai frowned, skeptical. "Superstition, maybe. or toxic spores that affect humans differently than native species. Tikri made one final gesture before moving to leave. It will return with food and water, Shaari translated. It says to respect the temple, to touch nothing, especially not the heartstone. She nodded toward the crystalline pedestal. After Tikri departed, Kai helped Shaari into one of the shallow depressions in the floor, which proved to be surprisingly comfortable, almost as if designed as resting places. He gathered some of the soft, moss-like growth from the walls to create a cushion for her. So, he said as he worked, seekers, temple ruins, heartstones. This is all new to me. I thought I knew this planet. Shaari gave him a look that might have been pity. Humans know only what they wish to know. Your kind came to Atarius and saw resources to be harvested, natives to be displaced. You never asked about our history, about what came before. I'm asking now, Kai said quietly. Shaari was silent for a long moment, considering. My father was a keeper of secrets, a scholar before the purge. He studied the seekers, the beings who built these temples. She gestured to the walls around them. They were not of this world, perhaps not even of this universe. They came to Atarius eons ago, built these structures, and then vanished. Why? What were they seeking? Balance, my father believed. They left behind artifacts, like the heartstone. She nodded toward the crystalline pedestal. Objects of power. My father dedicated his life to understanding them. And did he? Understand them? Shaari's expression grew distant. He was taking me to this very temple when we were attacked, when my spine was broken, when you found me. Kai's mind raced with implications. The Tarian, your father, he knew I'd bring you here? That's why he gave you to me? Perhaps, she said. My father saw things others could not. Connections. Patterns. The conversation was interrupted by Tikri's return. The Mrekti carried a woven basket filled with fruits, nuts, and what appeared to be strips of dried meat. It set the basket down and made more hand gestures before departing again. It says to eat and rest, Shaari translated. Tomorrow it will show us something important. They ate in silence, both lost in thought. The fruits were sweet and juicy, the meat gamey but satisfying. After their meal, exhaustion quickly overtook them. Kai checked Shaari's bandages one last time before settling into a neighboring depression. Good night, Shaari, he murmured. Good night, Kai Walker, she replied. Thank you for not leaving me behind. Never, he promised as sleep claimed him. Dreams came quickly, vivid, intense visions unlike anything Kai had experienced before. He saw Atarius from above, as if floating over the planet. He saw the jungles burning, Tarian villages reduced to ash. He saw the Correctors moving methodically across the land, a wave of destruction that left nothing alive in its wake. Then the perspective shifted. He was inside the temple, but not as it existed now, rather as it had been when newly built. The crystalline pedestal gleamed with internal light, and upon it sat a pulsating sphere of energy that seemed to draw his gaze inexorably inward. A voice spoke in his mind, not in words but in concepts that somehow translated themselves into understanding. The heart calls to you, human. It has waited for one with your bloodline. Kai tried to respond but found he had no voice in this dream state. Your grandmother touched the heart, changed it, changed herself. The lineage continues through you. Grandmother? Kai's confusion must have been evident even in the dream. Elara Walker. She who came before. She who understood. She who prepared the way. Kai's shock reverberated through the dreamscape. His grandmother had been to Atarius? Had found this temple? It wasn't possible. She had been a scientist on Earth, never left the Sol system as far as he knew. Time means nothing to the heart. Space means nothing. Only intention. Only purpose. The dream shifted again, and Kai saw himself standing before the pedestal, his hand outstretched toward the pulsating sphere. Blood dripped from his palm onto the crystalline surface, and where it touched, light bloomed, spreading outward in complex patterns like circuit boards beneath his skin. Blood calls to blood. The circle closes. He woke with a gasp, sitting upright in the stone depression. The temple was dark now, illuminated only by patches of bioluminescent growth on the walls. Across from him, Shaari slept peacefully. Kai rubbed his face, trying to shake off the strange dream. It had felt so real, more like memory than imagination. He glanced toward the center of the chamber where the crystalline pedestal stood. In the darkness, it seemed to emit a faint glow of its own. As his eyes adjusted to the dim light, Kai realized he wasn't alone. A figure stood near the entrance to the chamber. Tall, humanoid, but not human. Not Tarian either. Its skin seemed to shift and flow, like liquid silver in moonlight. Kai reached for his knife, moving slowly to avoid alerting the entity. "No need for weapons, Kai Walker." The voice was in his head, the same voice from his dream. "I am Keeper, last of the Seekers, guardian of the heart." "You're real," Kai whispered, hardly believing. "As real as you, as real as this temple, as real as the bloodline that connects you to this place." Kai glanced at Shaari, still sleeping. "Can she hear you?" "No, only you. Only the bloodline." "What bloodline? What are you talking about?" The figure, the Keeper, moved closer, its form rippling like mercury. "Your grandmother, Ilara Walker, came to this temple 50 Earth years ago. She touched the heart. It changed her DNA. Those changes passed to your parent, then to you." Kai shook his head, disbelieving. "My grandmother was a biologist. She never left Earth." "She left. She returned. She told no one of what she found here. What found her?" "And what was that?" The Keeper gestured to the pedestal. "The heart of Atarius. A fragment of our technology. A tool of balance left to protect this world." "Protect it from what?" "From those who would destroy it. From those who see only resources to exploit, species to subjugate. From those you call Correctors." Kai stood, moving closer to the strange entity. "If this heart is meant to protect Atarius, it's doing a pretty poor job. The Tarians are being systematically exterminated. The heart sleeps. It awaits the completion of the cycle. It awaits you, Kai Walker." "Me? What am I supposed to do?" "Blood calls to blood. Your blood can awaken the heart, can restore balance to Atarius." Kai felt a chill despite the warm night air. "My blood?" The Keeper pointed to the pedestal. "A sacrifice freely given. Not life, merely essence. The heart will do the rest." Before Kai could respond, a sound from outside the temple caught his attention. The unmistakable clink of metal on stone. He whirled, forgetting the Keeper momentarily. "Shaari!" he hissed, moving quickly to her side. "Wake up! Someone's coming!" She stirred, instantly alert. "Correctors?" "I think so." When Kai turned back to where the Keeper had stood, the entity was gone, vanished as if it had never been there. He had no time to wonder about the strange encounter as the sounds outside grew closer. Multiple sets of footsteps, trying but failing to move silently. "How many?" Shaari whispered. "Can't tell. At least 3. Kai grabbed his knife, moving to position himself between Shaari and the entrance. The wound in his thigh protested the sudden movement, but the Kirafel medicine had done its work. The pain was manageable. "We need to move deeper into the temple," he said, already reaching for Shaari. "No time," she replied, her voice tense. "They're already here." As if on cue, shadows appeared in the entryway. Human figures in the distinctive armor of Correctors, weapons at the ready. Kai counted 5 of them, each carrying a composite bow with a nocked arrow. "Well, well," said the lead Corrector, stepping into the chamber. "A human traitor and a blue skin, exactly as reported." He turned to his companions. "See? Nothing to fear from the temple, just old stone and superstition." Kai's mind raced, seeking any advantage. The chamber offered little cover, and he was outnumbered 5 to 1. Even at full strength, those odds would be nearly impossible. "What do you want?" he asked, playing for time. The lead Corrector laughed. "Want? Nothing from you, traitor. We're just cleaning up loose ends. Corporate policy. No witnesses to the resource reclamation project." "Genocide," Shaari spat. "Call it what it is." The Corrector shrugged. "Call it whatever you want, Blueskin. The result's the same. Your species is a footnote in history now." He raised his bow, aiming directly at Kai. "Any last words, traitor to humanity?" Kai felt a strange calm settle over him. The dream, the Keeper's words, the crystalline pedestal. It all suddenly made a perverse kind of sense. "Just four," he said quietly. "Blood calls to blood." With a movement too quick for the correctors to react, he slashed his palm with his knife and lunged for the pedestal, slamming his bleeding hand onto the crystalline surface. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Light exploded from the pedestal, a shockwave of energy that knocked the correctors off their feet. The crystalline material beneath Kai's hand liquefied, flowing up his arm like living metal, tracing patterns beneath his skin, just as in his dream. Pain and power surged through his body in equal measure. He felt as if he were being unmade and remade simultaneously. Every atom pulled apart and reassembled according to some alien blueprint. Through eyes that suddenly perceived beyond the visible spectrum, Kai saw the correctors scrambling to their feet, saw them knock arrows and take aim. Time seemed to slow, each movement captured in excruciating detail. Without thinking, without knowing how he knew, Kai raised his transformed hand, now encased in what looked like liquid metal, and pushed. The arrows simply vanished, not stopped or deflected. They ceased to exist midair. The correctors' faces registered shock, then fear. Their leader shouted an order, and they dropped their bows, drawing close combat weapons instead. They charged as one, a coordinated attack that might have overwhelmed Kai before. But he was no longer exactly Kai Walker. He moved with impossible speed, the liquid metal flowing over his body, enhancing his strength, his reflexes. The first corrector reached him, knife slashing toward his throat. Kai caught the man's wrist and squeezed. Bones shattered beneath his grip. The second and third attackers came from different angles. Kai kicked one with enough force to send him flying across the chamber, while grabbing the other by the throat and lifting him bodily from the ground. It was over in seconds. 4 correctors lay broken on the temple floor, unconscious or dead. Only their leader remained standing, backing away with undisguised terror in his eyes. "What? What are you?" he stammered. Kai looked down at his transformed body, the liquid metal now covering him completely like a second skin. He could feel the power of the heart flowing through him, restructuring him on a fundamental level. "I am balance," he said, and his voice echoed with harmonics that weren't entirely human. The corrector turned to flee, but Kai was faster. He caught the man by the shoulder, spinning him around. "You came to eradicate a species," Kai said, the metal fluid rippling across his skin. "To erase a world's history for profit." Fear gave way to defiance in the corrector's eyes. "We were following orders, doing our job." "So am I," Kai replied. "Doing my job, saving lives." He placed his metallic palm against the man's chest. "Remember that in your next life." Energy pulsed from Kai's hand, and the corrector's eyes widened in shock. Not pain, but revelation. His body convulsed once before he collapsed, unconscious but breathing. Kai turned to find Shaari watching him, her expression a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Kai," she whispered, "is it still you?" The question gave him pause. Was it still him? He felt changed, enhanced, but his memories, his identity, they remained intact. "Yes," he said after a moment, "it's still me. Just more." As he spoke, the liquid metal began to recede, flowing back into his wounded palm and disappearing beneath his skin. The wound sealed itself, leaving a shimmering scar in the shape of an intricate glyph. Shaari dragged herself closer, reaching out tentatively to touch the scar. "What happened? What is this?" Kai struggled to put into words what he barely understood himself. "The heart of Atarius. It's a tool, a weapon, I don't know exactly. It was left by the Seekers to protect this world. My grandmother found it decades ago. It changed her DNA, passed those changes down to me. And now," Kai flexed his hand, feeling the power still humming beneath his skin, dormant but accessible. "Now it's part of me, or I'm part of it, and I think I can use it to stop the purge, to save your people." Shaari's eyes widened. "How?" Before Kai could answer, a new presence made itself known. The Keeper, materializing from the shadows as if formed from them. "The heart has awakened. The cycle is complete." Shaari gasped, scrambling backward. "What is that?" "You can see it?" Kai asked, surprised. "Hear it?" Of course I can see it, she snapped. What is it? I am Keeper, the entity projected, apparently now communicating to both of them. Last of the Seekers, guardian of the heart that now resides within your companion. Shaari looked from the Keeper to Kai and back. The stories were true, she breathed. My father was right. Your father understood much, daughter of Nal. He was wise beyond his years. Kai interrupted the exchange. What happens now? How do I use this power to stop the Correctors? The Keeper moved closer, its mercurial form flowing rather than walking. The heart responds to intention, to will. What you desire most deeply, it will manifest. I want to save the Tarians, Kai said immediately. Stop the genocide. Such intention requires focus, direction. The Keeper gestured to the unconscious Correctors. These are but symptoms. The disease originates elsewhere. The corporation, Kai realized, Starlight Extraction Corp. They're behind the purge. To truly end the threat, you must reach its source. How? Their headquarters is on Earth, across interstellar space. The Keeper's form seemed to smile, though it had no clearly defined facial features. Distance means nothing to the heart. Space is an illusion it does not recognize. Shaari reached for Kai's hand, gripping it tightly. What is it saying? That you can travel to Earth instantly. Not just travel, the Keeper corrected. Transform. The heart can send a wave of truth across the galaxy. Show the architects of genocide the reality of their actions, the consequences of their choices. Like what happened to the Correctors, Kai said, understanding dawning. They saw the truth and couldn't bear it. Truth is the greatest weapon against those who build empires on lies. Kai looked at his hand, at the shimmering glyph that marked where the heart had entered him. Such power was terrifying. The ability to judge, to transform, to potentially destroy minds with revealed truth. How do I control it? He asked. Make sure it only affects those responsible? Intention guides the heart. Focus your will on those who ordered the death of a world. The heart will find them wherever they hide. Shaari squeezed his hand tighter. Kai, this is bigger than saving just me, just the survivors we know. This could save all of Atarius. He nodded, decision made. What do I need to do? The Keeper gestured to the center of the chamber. Return to the pedestal. Place your marked hand upon it. Will the heart to extend beyond yourself, to reach across the void to those who must see truth. Kai moved to the crystalline structure, Shaari watching intently from where she sat. Be careful, she called. Whatever happens, come back. He gave her a reassuring nod before placing his palm, the one marked with the shimmering glyph, onto the pedestal surface. The reaction was immediate. The crystal pulsed with light, and the liquid metal emerged once more from Kai's scar, flowing across his body. But this time, it didn't stop with him. Tendrils of the metallic substance shot outward from the pedestal, racing across the floor in fractal patterns before climbing the walls. The entire temple began to thrum with energy, the ancient stones vibrating at a frequency just below audible. The strange script carved into the walls began to glow with the same light as the pedestal. Kai felt his consciousness expanding, stretching beyond the confines of his physical form. He perceived Atarius from above, then the star system it resided in, then the sector of the galaxy. Distance collapsed, becoming meaningless as the heart's influence extended further. Earth. He could see Earth now, blue-green and familiar. Then closer, North America, the Pacific Northwest, the gleaming corporate headquarters of Starlight Extraction. He saw the board members in their meeting room, discussing profit margins and resource allocation, saw the CEO reviewing reports of the native clearance operation on Atarius, saw the cold calculations that had condemned an entire species to extinction for the sake of quarterly earnings. Kai focused his will, his intention crystallizing into a single thought. See the truth of what you've done. The heart responded. A wave of energy pulsed outward from him, traversing the impossible distance in an instant. He watched as it washed over the corporate headquarters, over every person who had planned, approved, or profited from the destruction of Atarius. Their reactions were varied but uniformly intense. Some collapsed immediately, overwhelmed by the sudden awareness of the suffering they had caused. Others fought against the revelation, trying to rationalize, to justify. But the truth was relentless, inescapable. The CEO, a woman in her 60s with cold eyes and a colder heart, stood from her chair, walked calmly to the wall of windows overlooking the city below, and began methodically smashing her head against the glass. Security personnel rushed to restrain her as she screamed about blue children burning. Throughout the building, similar scenes played out. The architects of genocide confronted by the reality of their actions, unable to hide behind corporate euphemisms and profit motives. Kai didn't stop there. The Heart's influence followed the chain of command, to military leaders who had provided the Correctors, to politicians who had turned blind eyes in exchange for campaign contributions, to media executives who had suppressed reports of the atrocities. All of them saw, all of them knew. Then Kai extended his focus further, to the Correctors still on Atarius, still hunting Tarians. The waves spread across the planet's surface like ripples in a pond, touching every human involved in the purge. Some died, their minds unable to reconcile what they had done. Others were driven mad, reduced to gibbering wrecks haunted by visions of their victims. A few, a very few, found something like redemption in their suffering, their perspectives fundamentally altered. When it was done, when the last Corrector had been touched by truth, Kai finally released his hold on the pedestal. The liquid metal receded once more, flowing back beneath his skin. The temple's vibrations slowed, then stopped. The glowing script faded back to dormancy. Kai staggered, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. He would have fallen if Shaari hadn't somehow managed to drag herself to his side, supporting him as best she could with her limited mobility. "Did it work?" she asked, searching his face. "Are they gone?" "Yes," Kai managed, his voice hoarse. "The Correctors, the corporation behind them, they've been neutralized." The Keeper materialized beside them, its mercurial form less defined than before, as if it were beginning to lose cohesion. "Well done, Kai Walker. The Heart has served its purpose. Balance is restored. For now." "For now?" Shaari questioned. "What does that mean?" "Greed and cruelty are constants across all species, all civilizations. This threat has ended, but others will arise. That is why the Heart remains. Why it has bonded to one who understands both worlds, human and Tarian." Kai looked down at the glyph on his palm, still faintly luminescent. "It's permanent, isn't it? This connection. Until your death. Then it will seek another worthy vessel, perhaps one of your bloodline, perhaps not. The Heart chooses based on spirit, not merely genetics." The implications were staggering. Kai would carry this power, this responsibility, for the rest of his life. "What do I do now?" he asked. The Keeper's form wavered, growing more transparent. "Live, rebuild, help the Tarians reclaim their world. The Heart will guide you when needed." As the entity spoke, its form began to dissolve completely, motes of light separating and floating upward like embers from a dying fire. "My watch is ended," it said, voice fading. "Yours has just begun. Remember, Kai Walker, the Heart responds to intention, to will. Use it wisely." And then the Keeper was gone. The last of the Seekers returned to whatever dimension or state of existence it had come from. Kai and Shaari remained in the temple for 3 days, recovering from their ordeal. During that time, something miraculous happened. Shaari began to move her legs. At first just twitches, then controlled movements, and finally on the 3rd day, she stood unassisted for the first time since her injury. "The Heart," Kai realized as he watched her take careful steps around the chamber. "It's healing you." Shaari nodded, wonder in her eyes. "I can feel it, like tiny streams of warmth flowing along my spine, reconnecting what was broken." Tikri returned on the 4th day, bringing news from the outside world. Through Shaari's translation, they learned that the Correctors had indeed fallen. Some dead, others wandering mindlessly through the jungle, no longer hunting or killing. But there were other survivors, Tarians hiding in remote regions, Mrekti villages that had escaped destruction, even a few humans who had opposed the purge and gone into hiding rather than participate. "We need to find them," Shaari said immediately. "Bring them here. Start rebuilding." Kai looked around the ancient temple, considering. This could be a sanctuary, a place to begin again. Over the following weeks, survivors began to arrive, drawn by rumors spread by the Merekti of a safe haven, of correctors fallen and a chance to live again. Tarians came first in small groups of 2 or 3, then larger bands. Each brought stories of horror and narrow escape. Each carried emotional and physical wounds that needed healing. Kai used his medical knowledge and, when necessary, the power of the heart, to treat the most severely injured. Shaari, now fully mobile, became a leader among her people, organizing the growing settlement and establishing links with the Merekti tribes. The first year was the hardest. They nearly starved during the planet's brutal winter season, when game became scarce and the crops they attempted to plant withered in soil contaminated by the chemicals the Correctors had used in their Scorched Earth campaign. But the heart's influence was spreading. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the land began to heal. Plants grew stronger, more resistant to the toxins. Animals returned to areas that had been devoid of life. By the 3rd year, their settlement had grown into a proper village. Nearly 400 Tarians now lived in and around the temple ruins, along with a small community of Merekti who had chosen to join them. They had established farms, workshops, and even a school where the children, including several of mixed Tarian, Merekti heritage, learned the histories of both peoples. Kai and Shaari stood on a ridge overlooking the village, watching as the sun set behind the distant jungle. "Your father would be proud," Kai said softly, "to see his people thriving again." "Our people," she corrected him, taking his hand. The bond between them had evolved gradually over the years, from reluctant companions to trusted friends to something deeper. "You're one of us now, Kai Walker, the human who carries the heart." He smiled, squeezing her blue-skinned hand in his. "I suppose I am." As darkness fell, lights began to appear below, hundreds of them, as people lit their evening fires and lanterns. From this distance, they looked like stars fallen to earth, a constellation of life where once there had been only death and pursuit. "We did not merely survive," Shaari said, echoing words she had spoken years ago, when they were fugitives with no hope beyond the next day. "We became part of this world. And this world is part of us now," Kai added, feeling the heart pulse gently beneath his skin, a reminder of the responsibility he carried and would carry for the rest of his days.